Good evening. This is Lila and Val. We're bringing you some very interesting bedtime stories tonight. We have the honor of introducing Mary Rodwell. She has been a lecturer and an author, and she has done what is considered a very wonderful thing. She has done a in the area of aliens and star children. And we sure would like to have some feedback and interview her. This is a one-time thing with her, and it's wonderful. We're so honored to have the celebrity here this evening. And so we're going to start with Mary. Well, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and how you got into all this?
Lila, I'm very happy to share a little bit about how I got into this very unusual field, if you like, as some people would call it, although it's very much the norm for me now. It's my normal life. I trained as a nurse and a midwife, and if you told me 40 years ago that one day I would be traveling the world talking about aliens and UFOs, I'd have probably said there's a good psychiatrist down the road. So a lot has changed. It was from being a nurse and that I actually then trained to be a counsellor, and it was really that back door, being a counsellor, working in medical practice, and then finally working in counselling agencies, doing a whole range of things from grief and bereavement to people with issues, etc., that I came to the most interesting in my book of counselling was when a really lovely gentleman came through the door and said he'd heard I was open-minded. For this, there was no support groups, and for him, that he said most people just think you're crazy. And he told me that he'd been taken up on spacecraft, that he woke up with marks on his body and shaved areas. The whole family was having experiences and very scared. And he said, can you help? Well, that started me off on this journey. And fortunately, because I'm a collector of books of all kinds of phenomena, always since I was a little girl, I was interested in the mysteries of life and what it all meant, why were we here, the big questions. I'd read a couple of books on the topic, which I was very grateful for, because it helped me help this gentleman. And one of them was by a psychiatrist called Dr. John Mack, who sadly got in London a few years ago, and he wrote the book Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens. He was a former professor of psychiatry at Harvard University, so I knew he was extremely credible. And also the book that most people within the field know about is Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. So I got a professional looking at this phenomena, and I also read about someone experiencing it. So I was fortunate to at least have that. And really, the first gentleman that walked in the door, as I say, was very credible. He was very articulate. He knew how it sounded, but was seeking help. And that's really where, the rest is history, really. 25 years now down the track, supporting people from all over the world. I've worked with over 3,000 individuals globally. And I've written the two books. One particularly to help people through the process, called Awakening. And my second book, it broadens it because I now talk to families and children with experiences that recall going on spacecraft, what they learn on spacecraft, how they feel connected to the beings in the new human, the new children that you mentioned, Lila, which are the ones that are often seen as dysfunctional. In fact, I don't believe in dysfunctional. I just believe they're an upgrade human, and they are just operating differently, and we haven't yet recognized it. So really, in overview, I've gone a very long way down this rabbit hole that we call the extraterrestrial phenomena. And with anyone who has any doubts that it's a reality, there is so much evidence now on the internet. All I say is do your homework, do your research, and I think you'll find that it's compelling to understand that we're not alone.
Mary, this is such an exciting and wonderful thing that's happening, but and we're finding too with introducing our new thinking of people just seem to be resistant. They just don't want to be bothered, or they're happy with the way their lives are. And aliens, I tell them, there are aliens that are really here. They really, really are. But it kind of glazes over. How do you get through to them?
Well, I'm of the opinion that it either hits you in the face when you see your first unexplained aerial phenomena they call UFOs. Sometimes it's the way someone's hit across the face with it, and it's very hard to deny. Having experiences where you wake up and you can't move, then you feel you're being taken somewhere and had procedures done and wake up with marks on your body. It's very hard to keep denying that. There are those that I think, because they're so entrenched in their belief system, whether it's through religion or something else, that it's very hard to face the fact that what they've believed all their lives may not be accurate, and it can be very scary. It is like I was talking to a young Indian man who told me he was a starseed, and he said the problem with his culture, with his relatives and with his family, is these gods, which he says I know are extraterrestrials. They're not gods at all, but I can't tell them that because they still worship them. They still pray to them. And he said, what can you do? How can I say to them, you're worshipping extraterrestrial beings, not gods? So, it takes a process. It takes people being ready on some level to take that step and question their reality, to question their educational beliefs. Let's face it, everyone is programmed to believe unless you can touch it, feel it, see it, hear it. It isn't real. And yet we all actually access dimensional reality. We all have intuition. We all have feelings, emotions and knowings and insights that do not come logically, do not come through that 3D window of reality at all. And, how do you explain that? But psychology still denies that unless you can see it, feel it, touch it, and analyze it, then it isn't real. So we've got a psychology that's inaccurate. We have a psychiatry that's inaccurate because it doesn't embody multidimensional reality and human consciousness.
Mary, I've been wondering for years about stars. They say that there are special people that have special intuition and all this. Do you suppose maybe, I know them all. I was looking at the children and mothers putting their babies in their carts and wondering, gee, I wonder if that's a star baby. And how can I tell? Do I have to, maybe my child is more than this, or where does he come from? He can't talk yet, or maybe that's too young yet. Are star children older than that? I just don't know. Tell us something about star children.
Well, I believe that it's not just the newer generation. Some are saying that it's from the year 2000 we've got the very awake new star children, but star children have been coming in for many generations, and even the older generations that I talk to, age and even older than myself, there were just not so many of them awake to this or seeking their understanding or trusting their senses. It's just that with the new ones coming in with less baggage, if you like, and I was told that the ones from 2000 particularly are born very, and as one star girl told me from Spain, that she had encoded in her DNA the wake-up call at 15, where she suddenly realized who she was and what her mission was, and or with all her psychic abilities and what have you. Every single one of us has those abilities. It's just for many of us, we've been told it's not real, it's your imagination. So we've shut down. Whereas a lot of these new kids coming in with far more awareness of what's going on. So they're not quite so easily shut down. And that is because they appear different and dysfunctional. So modern psychology says, oh, well, they're not normal. Diagnose them as ADHD or Asperger's or some forms of autism or dyslexia. They're not dysfunctional. They're just wired differently. And part of that wiring stops them being programmed into the 3D matrix, which is inaccurate. So what we're seeing now, and you're quite right, even the babies, many of them are being born telepathic now. So if you see a little baby bright and intelligent, even though they may not say anything, I mean, I've often done it. I've talked to them and the response with them because there's an awareness and awakeness to them that gives you that sense that they're one of the new ones. So I'll often do that little baby in the pram, the baby, and I'll look at the energy and how awake it looks, and then I'll just say, hi, how are you doing, in my mind, and say, how are you managing planet Earth and whatever. And it's amazing the responses that you get. So anytime you see a baby like that, Lila, you try it and you see what happens.
Well, okay. Oh, yeah. You say they look different. It's just that they're more aware, more awake, or just more energy, or just more beautiful.
It's more of an energetic thing. More that I work with those that are star seeds all over the planet now. There's an energy or a frequency that they have, and you can feel it if you're open to it. And it's interesting that I sometimes challenge people who I think are pretty certain that they're star seeds, and I'll just take them by surprise, and I will say to them, so where are you from? And sometimes they'll just say, oh, I'm from England, or then I'm saying, no, where are you really from? Without, oh, the Pleiades, or Orion, or whatever. And I laugh because I've caught them out. And then really I was asking that in the first place. Because what we're discovering now is many of those that are waking up, whether they're older generations like myself or younger, a huge shift. People are waking up to who they are and what they are. And I believe my understanding of the DNA and what's happening with the dormant DNA is being activated. And what I have always believed from the research that I've done is that we are a created species by these intelligences, and in our DNA is their DNA as well as ours. And what seems to be happening is a lot more of that part of our DNA from our cosmic heritage is now being activated. And that's why people are identifying with being hybrids and saying, look, I'm a hybrid and I know I'm from a particular star system. What really is happening, I believe, is that DNA from that system is being activated and they start to feel connected to more of those star systems than they just as a human, as it were. So many, especially the younger children and young adults that I talk about, hybrid. And my genetic nature is with Andromeda, Arcturus, and human. And they'll know that. They know it in a way that is integral to their understanding of being a hybrid. So we've got many like that now all over the globe, and even older generations. As they get their DNA activated through healing procedures, they may wake up through a shamanic experience. They may wake up because they've had a near-death experience. It isn't all by seeing a UFO or going up on a craft. It can happen in numerous ways. Spiritual practices can activate DNA because as their frequency rises, it activates more of that dormant DNA, which is part of our heritage, and they start connecting to the being. and start communicating. Many start communicating with them, getting downloads of information from quantum physics right through to healing information, new healing models. It happens in a multitude of ways, and it's all about the spiritual evolution, if you like, of humanity, is how I've come to understand it.
Well, that certainly puts a better light on things. It does. And are the aliens kind of they must be very aware of these children.
Well, and so are the covert agencies on this planet, I might add. And they will do their very best to shut them down because they don't want these bright new humans coming in and changing the status quo. But certainly it's an orchestrated cosmic agenda as far as I can ascertain at this point in my research. That there are many species out there that are wanting to see humanity evolve. And I think part of that is because of our technology, the fact that we now have technology that could destroy the planet, but also affect them. And that's not okay. And so they're trying to get us to be spiritually evolved so that we don't do stupid things with technology and we use maturity. Like at the moment, I think they see us as a 3-year-old with a loaded gun and doesn't understand that it can kill people. So they're having to do a very quick upgrade, I believe, and that's why we're seeing such a preponderance of more awake people on the planet now who are trying to change what we're doing to in ecology, in how we live, in the motivation behind why we do things, to stop having wars, to care about the plants and the animals. This is what the message we're getting from many of these intelligences now that are interacting with us.
It's very admirable. I understand that you're very positive with what's going on, but there's others that they're looking at the HARP and the 5G and the mandatory vaccinations and GMO foods and all the restrictions, and they're seeing the demise of the planet. So I was wondering how you see is there a time factor here, because things seem to be getting worse and worse in terms of the restrictions that we're getting. How do you see, and especially are you familiar with the Orions or the reptilians? And that's the second question. And do you see them as having an influence on the planet?
I think one of the things, Val, I've learned going into this is it's not black and white. And first of all, let's talk about what's going on the planet right now and how dark it appears to many people, and very disheartening when we see, as you say, all these things going polluted atmosphere, poisoning the rivers and the oceans, doing to children multiple vaccinations. Many of them, in my view, are not in any way positive to our health in one way or another. We've got fluoride in the water, for example, which is a neurotoxin. You've mentioned some of the things there, the chemtrails, all these different things. And we have now a process where ADHD, instead of seeing that as an upgrade human, they're actually putting drugs in children as young as 4 or 5 that are damaging these children. Yes, they slow them down so they can be programmed into 3D, which isn't accurate anyway. But not only that, is affecting their bodies and their minds in dreadful ways. And they're on them for years and years. All of this, I believe, is coming from the top down. And so who is behind that machination of doing this to the planet and to people with no sense of benevolence to humanity whatsoever? And there is, of course, the inference that there are less benevolent entities out there are orchestrating this, and it's more than possible that some of them, like they some of the reptilians. I don't think all reptilians and all of these species are necessarily bad, because experiences with certainly the reptilians and what have you. You have to be careful with everyone in the spirit. It's the same with the grey. Many see them as given, as negative, but I have been told of many encounters with various types of greys that have been very positive. One lady told me that she knew of at least 165 species of grey. So we've got to be very careful not to put every different species in the same bucket. I think we live in a duality. We're living in, where we have the positive and the loving, and we have the not loving and the negative. And I think we're, as a soul, coming into experience both. But certainly, at the top of the tree, whoever is controlling the strings, whether it's AI or whether or not it's a number of species, which may very well be the case,